Greetings. Thank you for coming back to the Spirit Walker channel. So we all know about the good teachers, Jesus, Buddha, Saint Francis, and a number of them that came to improve humanity. But what about the dark teachers? You know, the SOBs, if you pardon my French, that came to Earth to make life difficult for those that are trying to make an honest living and to make this planet a better place. First of all, they are just a manifestation of something that is much higher, because I do believe that evil or the dark forces, they are in fact tests to us. So it's not like evil is something that will take us out of our path. I see evil as something that will test how committed we are to our path of love and compassion or not. So with that said, I'd like to start with this infamous Grigori Rasputin Novi. Rasputin was born in 1869 in a very small village called Pokrovskoy in Siberia, and he was a son of a farmer. He was a farmer himself. And he since early age, he actually realized, and he made this clear to everybody, that he had some what some would call special powers. He did have the power to heal, so he used to heal horses in his in Pokrovskoye. He used to heal people. Later in life, he used to heal people. So he actually had what people describe today, or what the Law of One describes today, as access to intelligent energy and even access to intelligent infinity. So this guy, he did have healing powers, so he was capable of manipulating astral energies and mental energies, and he had a hypnotic magnetism, so it was like he could go through your mind when he was looking at you. Just by even in photographs, you see that his stare is quite disturbing. So I can only imagine what people felt when they were face to face with this guy. So as you can see, that he was a little bit disturbed and a little bit disturbing, and he also had the power of precognition. So he could see the future, he could foretell the future, and he used this to create a group of followers. So he would hypnotize women, not using hypnosis techniques that we see today, but hypnosis. He would hypnotize just by this stare, this weird stare that he had. He had some mental power. He had a real mental power. Even his materialistic biographers, such as Douglas Smith, even they acknowledge, even though they are materialists and they don't believe anything outside the material, but they acknowledge that Rasputin had something. Well, for we that we accept and study a little bit about metaphysics and spirituality, we know that these something else, these other powers, were a result of his capability of manipulating astral energies, in the same way that a Reiki master manipulates Reiki energy, which is an astral type of energy today. The only difference being that he used all of this power to control Tsar and Tsarina of Russia, Nikolai and Alexandra, and he decided to create this influence at some stage. The Tsar and Tsarina, they were so hypnotized by him that at some stage Rasputin was calling the shots. He was hiring and firing ministers in Russia. And of course this gave him a whole host of enemies in Russia, and he ended up being assassinated by one of the people that couldn't handle his influence over Tsar and Tsarina and over the whole of Russia. He was actually when he was being killed, he was poisoned with enough poison to kill a horse. It didn't kill him. Then he was shot. He also survived the shot. Then he was bashed. He survived the bashing. He was shot several times while trying to escape his captors, and he still survived. And eventually, the conspirators that killed him threw him in an icy lake. And sometime later, when they discovered the body, the police realized that he still had water in his lungs. So in other words, when he was thrown into the lake, he was still alive. So this shows you that Rasputin had a different type of energy. So he had a different type of energy, and he had a capacity to manipulate intelligent energy and intelligent infinity in a way that we do not, or most of us do not have, at least yet. The only difference being that he was evil. He was selfish. He wanted to control people. He invented this crazy idea to drive out sin by sinning, which is of course idiocy, which is of course just a cover for his desire to do bad things to bad people and have orgies and all of that stuff. But he came up with this idiocy, and people fell for it. So he would have sex with married women, and they would fall hypnotized for him, and he would have orgies, and he would do pretty much everything that he wanted with her or with them, because it was all about control. He was evil. It's service to self. It's control of other people. Now, the funny thing, the very interesting thing is that the Law of One says that Rasputin is one of the very, very, very few humans that actually ascended into fourth density negative. So, in other words, Rasputin, while he was here, he was already operating at a level of consciousness, a level of development of consciousness that is above the average person on the street. And that's the reason why he had all of these powers. He really had these powers. It's not just people making that up. He really had these powers. Even the atheists, materialist biographers acknowledge that he had powers. The way that he died was actually very suggestive that he did have some other type of energy circulating within him, and he ended up, according to the Law of One, he ended up ascending in inverted commas into fourth density negative. So basically, this Rasputin, the soul of Rasputin, apparently he is already reincarnated, and he is at the same level as, for example, the reptilians that control Earth and are fourth density negative beings. So this dude there is already at that level. The rest of us, what we are trying to do is to ascend into fourth density positive. So in other words, is to have all of those powers, but to use those powers to positive beings, service to others. This is what we are trying to do. And these other guys that are doing exactly the opposite. And basically he was killed in 1916. He was and that was the end of him. He actually ended up natural law caught up with him and gave back to him all of the hatred and selfishness that he had dished out to others throughout his life. The next SOB, pardon my French, it's very. I would like to use equanimity with this lot, but I find it very hard. So the next SOB, the next dark teacher that we can that I would like to mention is this Jewish person called Shabbatai Zevi or Tsvi, Shabbatai Zevi. It's a difficult name for me to pronounce. He lived in the 1600s, and he was a very charismatic rabbi, and he also set up a following of hundreds. Apparently, at some stage, he actually had 1 million followers because he was already using the newly invented printed press to distribute his material. So he had followers all the way in all Europe, although he was born in Turkey, in the town of Smyrna, and he, as a Jewish person, but he actually had followers all over the world, and he also came up with this crazy idea of driving out sin by sin. So basically, his view was, according to Jewish tradition in the Torah, the Messiah will come either when everybody is good or when everybody is bad. So the measure of sin has reached its maximum. So what this genius decided to do was, he said, okay, it's going to be very difficult for us to transform everybody into good people. Therefore, let's do the opposite. Let's try to accelerate the coming of the Messiah by doing the exact opposite. Let's all be sons of bitches and do everything that we want. Let's commit all sorts of sin, everything that is wrong out there to do. Let's do it, because that is our way of accelerating the Messiah. But apparently, he wasn't very patient, and he ended up in the year of 1666, which is of course very significant, in 18 of June of 1666. So it's 18 is 3 times 6. June is the month of 6, in 1666. So he actually chose this date very carefully, and he said, look, I am the Messiah, I am Messiah, I am the Messiah, and you guys should do everything that I do. And he created this idea of orgies in the name of religion, in the name of God, and lying. And then the Sultan of Turkey didn't like that what was happening, didn't like the power that he had. So the Sultan came to him and said, look, you either convert to Islam or I'm going to kill you. And instead of choosing martyrdom, he actually converted to Islam, and he secretly kept on practicing his own religion as he had invented, with orgies and sacrifices and all of them, Luciferian, satanic things. So this was seen by his supporters as the green light for them to create the idea of what's known as a crypto Jew, which is a Jewish person that nominally accepts another faith, but then behind closed doors they do something else. Today the Illuminati cabal, they do this. They profess that they are very good citizens on the facade, but within closed doors they do human sacrifices and all of that stuff. All of that started with this guy, Shabbatai Zevi. All of that started with this guy. So he is the SOB that came up for the first time with this idea of Luciferianism disguised as something else, in order to fulfill his own goals. Now, Tsvi ended up influencing another person that was called Jacob Frank, and this Jacob Frank was also as bad as Tsvi, and he operated 100 years before. 100 years after Shabbatai Zevi, and he actually believed that he was the reincarnation of Tsvi, and he decided to do exactly the same thing. So the secret orgiastic feasts, the human sacrifice, and everything in the name of control, in the name of service to self. And this is the guy, Jacob Frank. This is the guy that met Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria, and these two, together with one of the Rothschilds, these three persons, they are the ones that decided to set up the Illuminati on the 1st of May in 1776. So you can see that the dark teachers, the negative teachers, they have a long history. They are people with privileged intellects. Some of them, as was the case of Shabbatai Zevi and Rasputin, and probably even Adam Weishaupt, they do have superior capacity of consciousness, so they probably already have things like the ability to manipulate astral energy, the ability to hypnotize people, telepathy, probably a little bit of telekinesis as well, precognition. Both Tsvi and Rasputin had these capabilities, and so these people are already people that are operating or starting to operate at a higher level of consciousness, except that they want to screw everybody else. So they have chosen the negative path. And one interesting thing about the Illuminati is that Jewish people, they're not responsible for the Illuminati. Jewish people are actually the victims of the Illuminati, because basically what they were doing was that this crypto Jew group decided came up with the idea of Zionism, which is it's not enough for us to have power, but we actually want to have a country. So they came up with this idea, this fantasy of the Jewish state. That's Zionism. So they even decided to control the countries in Europe to make life as miserable as possible for the Jewish people in Europe, just so they would cry out for a country of their own. And this is how the whole idea of the several massacres and the persecutions that the Jewish people have suffered in Europe have come about. They have been persecuted in Spain, they have been persecuted in Russia, and of course they have been persecuted in Germany, the Holocaust and everything. So the Jewish people are actually victims of these bunch of SOBs that decided to serve their own purposes, using the the facade of the Illuminati. And of course, today we still have the influence, or maybe more than ever, we have the influence of the Illuminati in our society. Now, the one thing that I wanted to close this discussion with is that the dark teachers, they are not fakes. They're not faking. They do have the capacity to manipulate astral energies. They do, and mental energies. They do have powers of telepathy, telekinesis, possibly even including levitation, precognition. So some of these guys are already well into the path of fourth density, except that they chose fourth density negative. Now, the question that I want to ask, and this is really a very, it's not a very comfortable question, is this. These guys have brought a lot of suffering to humanity, but are they just scapegoats? So, in other words, are they just avenues for humanity to vent its own evil? So, for example, we discussed that Shabbatai Zevi was a very evil person, and he was really bad, and he was doing everything against Jewish tradition, against Jewish morality, etc., etc., etc. But at some stage, he had more than 1 million followers back in 1776 or a little bit after that. So, he's a very bad people, and he's a very bad person, and people decide to follow him. So that's a sign that there is something really teetering between good and evil in humanity, because we have received good teachers, and we have received some dark teachers, and a lot of people decide to choose to follow the dark teachers, even after so much pain and so much disgrace that they have brought to us, and this is still happening today. So thank you for listening. Please share, like, and subscribe. And if you can leave your comments down below, please do so, and see you next time.